The Catholic Union has launched a new campaign to lift the 50% cap on faith-based admissions to new free schools, and it will only apply to oversubscribed faith-free schools in England. Introduced by the coalition government in 2010, the cap made it difficult for new Catholic free schools to open as the policy was incompatible with church law. The union has opposed the cap since it was introduced, but in 2017 the Conservative manifesto committed to lifting the cap, but this was never achieved until now. So joining me now in the studio, I have the Deputy Director of the Catholic Union of Great Britain, James Somerville-Makel, to tell me more. Now, James, first of all, what was the contradiction or the conflict with church law and the law of the land?
So in this case, it was the fact that when Catholic schools open, they are first and foremost for the Catholic community. They're there as mission schools to pass on the faith and the values of the church. And of course, we welcome people from other backgrounds and none. So 40% of pupils at Catholic schools come from other faiths and none. Okay. But they are first and foremost for the Catholic community. And with this cap in place, it would mean schools turning away pupils purely because of their faith. And so our bishops couldn't sanction that. And it's meant the Catholic community now can't take part in this government flagship policy.
OK, so it would end up with schools saying, no, you're Catholic, so you can't come in because we've met our quota.
Exactly right,
okay.
Yes. Yeah.
That's bizarre. OK, so it looks like this is going to get reversed, or the cap is going to get lifted. Is it going to go through?
Well, we have about a year to the next general election. It was promised in the 2017 manifesto. We didn't manage to get it lifted. There was no mention of it in the 2019 manifesto.
Right.
The government have said they're keeping it under review. We've launched an open letter to the Secretary of State, Gillian Keegan. We've already got several hundred people backing that letter. We're hoping to get a lot more so that she hears the strength of feeling from the Catholic community that this policy needs to be scrapped for the next election to show this government's left a legacy of delivering for faith groups.
Oh, so it's not a given that this is going to get lifted?
Not at the moment, no.
You're relying
unfortunately
on
not.
the competence of our Education Secretary. I will withhold my comments on that one. But it's interesting that this was in the manifesto since 2017 and they've not acted upon it. That's disgraceful for the Conservative governments, especially since they are the ones that put it in the first place. But what would you say to people who say, but this is not inclusive, you know, what we need these schools to be taking on board people from different faiths and different backgrounds? Well,
I say they are inclusive. I mean, you look at our Catholic schools at the moment, half of pupils come from ethnic minority backgrounds. They go out of their way to recruit pupils from the most deprived backgrounds, so they're already doing great work in this area. There's a real point about principle here, which is that if you believe in plurality and diversity in our education system, you can't have a flagship government policy where an entire faith group cannot take part. And one of the most fundamental principles and values in education is sending your child to a school that reflects the values and faith at home. That's how we create a pluralist, tolerant, open society. If it doesn't start at the home and schools, you don't get diversity in society. So there's an important point of principle here. Practically, it's holding back new Catholic schools from opening. So both practically and from the point of view of principle, it needs to go.
Well, yeah, I would agree. I think we need more Catholic schools because they are schools that still tend to at least stick to their values, which is something I can't say for Church of England schools. But the point there is the values. If a family is sending their child to a Catholic school, they suspect they know what the value set is going to be. Therefore, there's going to be more demand for that. And what we're seeing, I don't know if you can corroborate this, is that, or corroborate rather, words, what are they? Is that Muslim families are taking their children out of Church of England schools at the moment because they're realising that they're teaching woke nonsense about transgender issues and woke nonsense around sexual ethics that don't subscribe to the Christian value set. Are Catholic schools seeing the same problem?
I think that we are seeing an increasing appetite and interest in people sending their children to Catholic schools to make sure their children are brought up in an environment that reflects the values and faith of home. That's absolutely right, and I think all parents would want to do that. It's one of the most natural things in the world. The really frustrating thing with this cap is that it only applies when a school is oversubscribed.
Right.
So actually, with a lot of other faith group schools, the cap doesn't apply because they're not oversubscribed. It's precisely because Catholic schools are so popular, they achieve above average results, there's a great care and quality in their teaching, that parents from all backgrounds, all faiths and none, want to send their children there. So Catholic schools are in effect a victim of their own success.
Yeah. And they should have that mission. I'm with you. I want to read a quote from one of my favourite Catholic bishops, Bishop Barron, who said that some years ago, when I was an auxiliary bishop in California, I was in dialogue with the board members of a Catholic high school. When I commented that their purpose of the school was ultimately evangelization, many of them balked and said, if we evangelize, that will alienate most of our students and their parents. My response was, well, then you should just close the school. Who needs more secular STEM academies? Needless to say, I was never invited back to address the board. Is this not the fundamental problem with our faith schools in the UK, Emma Webb? That they're not willing to evangelize, they're not willing to be proudly Catholic. They want to be inclusive, whatever that means.
Well, I mean, if you send your child to a Catholic school, I think you should expect that it will be a Catholic school. In the same way that if you send your child to an Islamic faith school, you would expect that it would be an Islamic faith school. I also don't see a problem with admitting 100% Catholic students. I think it's an absurd situation that a Catholic school should have to turn Catholic students away just because they're Catholic. It's a very strange government policy, particularly given the fact that Catholic schools do, at least from what I've read, seem to perform better than the standard. And this is going to put more pressure on Catholic schools because they can't open new Catholic schools. I think the whole system seems to be absurd. I think you need to be very careful in terms of, and probably I'm a bit more liberal than you on this, Kelvin. I don't think schools should teach contested ideas as fact. And I think that faith schools need to be very careful to be respectful in their evangelisation.
Is Catholicism a contested ideology?
Well, in the sense that some people don't believe in it. I mean, if you send
then you
your
don't send your child to a Catholic school.
No,
surely a Catholic school should be
right,
teaching an ideology of Catholicism.
But what I mean to say is that I don't think there is any problem with a Catholic school being explicitly Catholic in its values and in its beliefs. It's just that if they are going to, for example, receive public money from the government, that there need to be some kind of boundaries in place, because we're not just talking about Catholic schools here. Obviously, we have an interest in wanting the Christian gospel to be spread as far and wide as possible, but this would also apply to other faith schools as well. So you need to be very careful about these things so that you're being, respectful of those who might be in these schools who are not coming from a Catholic home. And yes, you're right, their parents don't need to send them there. But I think there is a balance to be struck whilst also recognising that there's no problem with a Catholic school being explicitly Catholic.
You're right, that was very liberal. Sharara Washington.
Well, I mean,
like
this is a potentially very long but a great topic for debate. Just, in a nutshell, in terms of Green Party policies, if that's of interest, we don't support or defend the free school agenda as such. We do think there's a problem there. Oh. And same with faith schools as such. We wouldn't want to abolish them, but there wouldn't be the same degree of public funding for them. But I think what's very interesting in this diversity of educational offering, if you like. It's James, is it?
Yes.
So you put forward the proposition, which I think is foremost in most parents' mind. I mean, I'm a parent. Where can I get the best education for my child? Almost irrespective of the religious ethos. But that almost brings us back to what's at the heart of the Greens' policy here, which is that we want the best education for everybody, however that's done. Now, you may say that you can't have one size fits all, and one way you might not be able to achieve that is when you look at, and Emma put the point very well actually, is that you do need standards and quality. And there may be a point, we don't have to choose Catholicism, we could talk about Islam. If you see certain values being promulgated, they might be homophobic. You do get flashpoints across society, you do get news stories coming out. If you have a religion of a faith school which is teaching in a way which we regard as backward, immoral, or contrary to liberal values, we need to have a way of intervening. So
I'm going to have to, but I strongly disagree, because who is we and who are we to intervene? If we know if a faith school is a faith school, it should be adhering to that faith, especially Catholic schools. More of them, please.